This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, school success makers, welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by two friends out of the great state of Missouri. We have Jennifer and we have Brian. And Jennifer is the Associate Professor of Christian Formation at College of the Ozarks. And then one of her best friends is joining on this one as well, who I know she says is really smart. So we're going to dive into all that because she just said that before I started recording, and she looks up to him and all the things that he has and knows. So we're going to dive into all that too. But Brian is the director of the Center for Christian Classical Education at College of the Ozarks. And if you guys are not familiar with College of the Ozarks, they're awesome. Of course, in Missouri, outside of Branson area, and it is a beautiful campus. You guys got to go. There's a hotel, there's a restaurant, there's a dairy farm, there's honeybees, there's all these things on campus, and we could dive into all that stuff too, but that's not the topic of discussion. But I am a huge fan of C of O, as well as the school there on campus, S of O. So love what you guys are doing there, and I can't wait to dive into all things education today. I won't spill any of the beans here, but before we jump into all that, I always pass it off to each guest to introduce themselves. And so, guys, welcome to the podcast today.
We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Mitchell.
So here's the question. I want both of you to answer this one because I know you guys are both in the same area here. So we'll say, I know it's Lookout Mountain technically, right? Now what it's called for like where the college is, technically the city, what's it called? Point Lookout. See, all right, I knew I was close. All right, so here's what we're going to say for this question. You can say that or Branson, or maybe you could even go to Springfield if you need to. But I want each of you to answer the question that everybody gets asked before we start. And it's this. If I was to visit, which I have many times, and I have some favorites there, but if I was to visit you guys there, what would you say, Mitchell, you need to eat this and do this to experience Branson or the area specifically? What would I need to do, Jennifer? You want to start?
Yeah, well, I've been in Branson 40 years, so I've seen a lot of change. And I'm going to choose to go with the non-commercial arena and say that you would need to go to a little burger joint on Lake Taneycomo. And actually, I would go to Table Rock because it's more fun. You can jump into Table Rock because it's beautiful. You can go in there. Actually, it's in Lampe. You'll never find it unless you get on your GPS, but there's a burger joint there. That's great. You can water ski to it or take your boat water skiing and get to it. But that takes you out of the commercial zone. Brian can pick something else if he wants.
What do you think, Brian? What are we doing? What are we eating and what are we doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I should probably say the Dobbins Dining Center at the Keeler Center at College of the Ozarks, fresh farm to table food served by students who are working for their education, debt-free, graduating debt-free. But once you've eaten there, because you've already eaten there, Mitchell, my favorite is Getting Basted. We have a barbecue restaurant here with a guy that's competed all over, been on TV doing his barbecue, and makes some of the best ribs I've ever had. So.
Okay, those are solid. Now I got to add one here. So I've even done this when I've interviewed somebody. So my favorite place, besides going to the Keeter Center and everything there at C of O, I every year had to go and went with Scott McElvain. Anytime we came in there, I was like, hey, he took me to the Poorhouse the first time we came.
Oh, yeah.
And we went there. My funny story that I just think is still hilarious. We got there and sat down, and the person came over to take our order, and I was like, oh, I saw you have sweet tea on the menu. Is it home brewed? And she was like, yeah, it's home brewed. And I was like, perfect. I'll have a sweet tea with some lemon. And then I said, can we get an order of the poutine? And she's like, sure. And she left, and he goes, what just happened, Mitchell? And I was like, what? He goes, why did you ask if it was home brewed? And I was like, because if it's not home brewed, I'm not getting it. It's not going to be good. I like homemade, like sweet tea. And he's like, oh, okay. All right. He goes, what's this poutine thing? And I was like, oh man, you got to try it. So he loved poutine. He never had it before. And that's a huge Canadian dish that I love a ton. So, and they make delicious poutine if you guys have not been there and had that. So you got to go get it.
Yeah. So interestingly, that's the same owner of Getting Basted, the guy that started
Okay.
the Poorhouse.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
We're all
excellent.
learning something. So we'll go to the Poorhouse together. Then we'll get some poutine and sweet teas next time I'm in the Branson area. So hopefully next year for conference. It'll be good. Well, let's do this before we jump into content today that we're going to talk about. If you guys could each just give a quick little background on who you are, how you got into your role, and what you kind of your day to day, what you do before we jump into some of the questions. So maybe Brian, you want to start us out?
Sure. So, I'll just start with the classical piece. I started in classical Christian education about 20 years ago. I know that because that's when my youngest son was born. He was born a week after I started teaching at the Geneva School in Orlando, and had begun imagining what and now the language I would say is it's like the life of the mind, or the Christian life of the mind, the Christian imagination. I had been kind of incubating in these thoughts of like wondering what education should be, knowing that my path up to that point had definitely had some high points, but it wasn't what I dreamed education could be or should be. So when I got into the classical movement, somewhat by accident, and God's sense of humor, I was like, please don't make me work with high school kids. And he goes, no problem, no problem. You can teach college, right? 5 years later, he's like, it turns out you're going to need to teach high school. I was like, I can't. And then I'm like, thank you, God, I love this. Like it was what I had been made for. But getting to teach, in a Christian school, but with the emphasis on, the Western tradition, really strong adherence to this idea of objective truth. That's what really captured my imagination. So in the beginning, it was teaching science, teaching chemistry primarily. And then just kind of throughout my career, I got to about the midpoint, somewhere around the time I turned 40, so like a couple of years ago. Just kidding. I just realized that I really wanted to shift away from the classroom and move towards impacting the schools and the movement at a larger scale. So I went back to school. And then slowly over time, kind of went through some administrative roles. There's a board that I serve on, but my main job right now is I'm the director of accreditation for the Society for Classical Learning, which is a robust school improvement mechanism that we've developed to help schools. Like I tell people, I don't actually care about accreditation. What I really care about is students coming to know Jesus. And I think the better a school is run, the more healthy a school is, the more likely that is to happen. So that, and then when I switched to working remotely, we stayed in the area. So I still have an office at College of the Ozarks, and that's where I do the Center for Christian Classical Education, which hosts 3 events every year. We do a spring conference, a summer teacher training, and then a fall event.
Awesome. You stay busy as we were talking about before we started recording. And
we do stay busy.
And Jennifer, what about you?
Yeah, I came to College of the Ozarks from the business world in 2000. So I was actually hired to write a discipleship program for the college students there. They didn't have anything at that time. And so I took my time in spending some time on campus and thinking about it. And because it's such a unique campus, we incorporated the 5 pillars: vocation, academics, patriotic, cultural, and Christian, those 5 pillars, into our discipleship program. And so over the years, we've reshaped it to call it Christian formation, and it's completely integrated into our academic program and to our vocational emphasis as well, all 5 pillars. And Christian formation in the academic world took the place of discipleship in the word. Christian formation isn't so prevalent in churches. But I like the word Christian formation better because it speaks about holistic development. And our faith formation is cognitive for sure to begin with, but the experience of our formation has to change our hearts in the way that we live. And so when we're teaching college students, for sure, our emphasis is on forming the whole person, which is why we call it Christian formation. And Brian and I got connected working together we share the commonality of Rooted Families, which is they're resources written for caregivers of all kind, teachers, parents, church members, pastors, coaches, anybody that loves a child and cares for their faith formation. And so he and I have been working together for the last 2 or 3 years promoting these resources.
Love it. Well, you both stay busy then. And I know we're going to We're gonna have some fun diving into our topic of discussion today because I know you both are passionate about it, and I don't want to steal the thunder, but I mean we're going to talk about this three-legged stool today, everybody. That's what we're going to talk about. Everybody's like, I thought we were talking about education, but we are, because there's a big piece of why we're talking about a three-legged stool. Brian, why are we? What is a three-legged stool in terms of? I know you said you didn't coin this phrase, but I know you said you're bringing it back. So what is this three-legged stool we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so when I first started at the Geneva School, our headmaster, Bob Ingram, talked a lot about the three-legged stool. And part of it was just a metaphor for us to kind of understand where the school starts and stops, where the family starts and stops, and where the church starts and stops. So, for example, as a Christian school, sometimes families kind of begin viewing you as their Christian community, right? And that's not necessarily problematic, but even to the extent to where we had some parents that came to us and said, "Can we launch a youth group? Like, can we just, every Wednesday after school, can we just do a youth group?" It's like, no, I mean, we're a school, we're not a church. Now, what I'm talking about specifically in that metaphor are parachurch schools, right? There are schools that are launched by churches. That's a slightly different category. But with the parachurch school, that's where the three-legged stool comes in. So in the beginning, again, 20 years ago, we talked about that quite a bit. It was like the family, the school, and the church. And then for whatever reason, over the last 20 years, like, people just aren't talking about it as much anymore. And I think that was always interesting when Jennifer and I started working together, was recognizing, well, first of all, just common, interest in Christian formation in the context of education. We're in lockstep on the purpose of education. And this is, if any of the listeners want to dig more deeply, this is the Jamie Smith, "You are what you love, desiring the kingdom." Like, all education is formative. You're always forming something. It's formation, not just information. The tricky part is you're always forming something, whether you want to or not. So you're either forming a Christian, right, or you're forming a cog in the wheel of consumerism. They're going to get a job and contribute to the economy, at least anyway. But education is always forming something, right? And so when I think about the three-legged stool and the way it's changed over time, so she came in and she kept talking about the family. I was like, yeah, like we need to keep having these conversations, because I think part of it is, and again, there's probably lots of reasons for this. Some generational, some just shifts in culture, postmodernism or whatever. But a lot of our schools kind of function as this place where people drop off their children to make them Christians, right? That's a lot of pressure on a school. Now, on the flip side, our private schools end up being kind of pricey. So I don't think we would say that, but sometimes implied in our value proposition really, really is that. It's like, hey, give us your kids, for 8 hours a day, and we'll put them back in the Honda Odyssey at the end of the day, and you'll be good to go. You can just go home and do whatever you want. It just doesn't work that way, right? And so I think the schools have taken too much of that burden. And again, the reason the stool's a great analogy or metaphor is that it has to be balanced, right? Like, if one leg is shorter than the other two legs and the stool's leaning, right? Or if one of the legs is weak and broken, the stool is not going to function. So, what I would love to see, and I think the reason I say I'm bringing it back is I would love the families to say, hey, look, we're partnering with the school, but we recognize that we got to do our part too, right? And then also the church coming back in and saying, like, hey, like, maybe we're not going to run a school, right? But how can we support our schools? How can we support our families? How can we work together in these resources and these common messages so that our communities, right, supported by family, church, and school, are helping children, be formed in the Christian life.
Love it, Jennifer. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think Brian and I come at it from two different perspectives. And when he talks about the legs of the stool, he's very clear about the three different, what I call them, relational institutions. But my work centers more on the seat of the stool. So the legs are fine, but they have to hold up something, right? They're irrelevant unless they're using what they're made for, to hold something up. And I think actually what Brian is hoping for can only really happen when everyone equally assesses the idea of the seat of the stool. So in my mind, the seat of the stool is what God is doing in us, in all of us as human beings, in shaping us into Christ's likeness. And we can call that our identity, our created identity. We're created with a specific identity by God to image Him. But we grow into that identity. And I think what we forget is that no one ever grows into their created identity in a vacuum. They all grow into it through these relationships that they have. And those relationships encompass all three of those relational institutions. So I think the only way that the stool can really function well as Brian desires is if everybody starts with sort of this idea of, okay, what are we doing together? Not how do I do this? How do you do this? And how do you do this? But what's our goal? And faith formation, in my mind, is really can't be separated from identity formation. So a child growing has to understand who they are in connection to the church, the family, and school is an empowering identity formation tool for them. It helps them to see themselves as functioning whole people, which is what God intended. So kind of in a nutshell, I'm all about the seat of the stool, and Brian really promotes those legs, but we all have to do it together.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple of years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. So I have so many things I want to ask about and dive into this, and just feedback from my perspective on what I've seen from even just friends in my life. Because I have some friends that their kids go to public school, but then they have the mindset of, but I put them in church on Sunday and I go to Wednesday night stuff. So I'm like, all right, well, it's like an hour to 2 hours max that you're saying is enough to form the child. And I know that like a lot of stuff's not happening behind the scenes at home. So like you're putting all their weight in that. But then you got the other people that I know, friends that also their kids go to Christian school, and they're like, cool, they're good because they're in there for 16,000 hours over the next 12 years. We're gonna be good. It's like and so there's so much here. So I guess what I would love to maybe start with, in a perfect world, how do you guys see this playing out? If the school played their proper role in this analogy, and the church played their proper role, and the family played their proper role, what does that look like? And I know that's probably like, we don't have maybe a specific answer, but if somebody's listening going, I want to make sure that they're all even legs and we're supporting the child to the best of our ability, what does that look like if all three do that properly?
Well, I think both of us are going to answer again from two different sides. So I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I like to use the analogy, I'm a big gardener. And I like to use the analogy that if I brought out all of my tools and showed you my favorite trowel and spade and wheelbarrow and my compost bin, and I said, look at what a good gardener I am. You wouldn't, Mitchell, because you don't know me well enough to know that I actually do grow things. I mean, it's silly to look at the tools and say that I'm a good gardener, but that's what happens. We often evaluate ourselves on what we do instead of who we're becoming. So the tools essentially are like the institutions. So if a parent sends a child to church or to school and says, hey, my child is a Christian because of these two institutions, then they're missing the point. They're what they're doing instead of who they're becoming. So I think every institution has to rethink, and ironically, this may fit with Brian's work in accreditation, but rethink the way that we live into our faith as ways in which we are practicing God's given his design for each of us, and we pass that on in this mutual relationships that we share. Parents and children. Nobody knows how to be a parent till they have a child. Nobody knows how to be a grandparent till they have a grandchild. Nobody really knows how to be a teacher until they get to the classroom, right? Nobody knows how to be a pastor or a mentor or a coach unless they actually have people that they're working with. So that's God's design of utilizing the gifts that he's given to help us become the people that he intended us to be. So that's not the easiest answer in terms of, I know you would like it to be succinct on what's the measuring stick to say that my church is doing this, or my school is doing this, or am I doing this? And I think that, but when it actually comes down to what Jesus is going to ask us, he's interested daily in who we're becoming. So at the end of the day, how did my school change my attitude about not only what I'm learning, but the people I'm with? The same with church and with family. How am I interacting with, because our becoming Christ-like is ultimately for the sake of others, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a broad, more abstract idea. We'll let Brian give it a shot.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think it ties into what you were saying a while ago too, with the seat of the stool. To some extent, it's having a common vision for why we're trying to work together. You think of Matthew 19:14, "Let the children come to me and do not hinder them." I'm like, do not hinder them, right? Like, you want to shout it from the mountaintops, right? Or the rooftop, because this is so important. And I think unintentionally, some of these legs of the stool can hinder them, or even keep the other ones from working as well. So step one, everybody's on the same page, right? The school is not threatened by the church is not threatened by the school, the family is not threatened by the one. And again, this is Jennifer's point too. It's becoming the kind of people that want this for their own lives, and then for their children, and then for their communities, right? That's a huge part of this. You can't give what you haven't received. So I think there's a couple ways to imagine it. One, I could see schools partnering with churches, so bringing pastors in to speak at chapel, or again, working on that connective tissue, that deep practices, the rituals that we share, right? And the school that I'm a board chair for in Orlando, Florida, does just that. Like we don't want to rent space from churches, right? We're looking for church partners. We're looking for churches that want to have a school, but recognize that they don't have the expertise to operate a school. So we'll come in, we'll operate a school in their facilities, and then they get to invest into the spiritually formative practices that are happening in the school. And sometimes they're a little bit theologically different. We're in an Anglican church, we're in a non-denominational mega church. We'll be in a Baptist church next year, and all that works great. So one is partnership, but I think it's the families too. And man, this is, I speak from, I was joking earlier about being in my early 40s. I'm in my early 50s. And so I have one child that just graduated college, and one that's in college now. And you kind of see them becoming adults, and recognize some of the things that you did well, and some of the balls you might have dropped along the way, right? And even in your own, church journey, right? Like, you look at the different churches I've been a part of, and ones that really nourished my soul and felt like promoted me to thriving. I've moved a few times, so I've switched churches, maybe more than some people. But so some of that is just life experience too. But it's I think the idea is that if we can get everyone on the same page with the same goal, we're living lives that demonstrate what we're asking students to do, that we're inviting students into, and then we're just moving in the same direction, right? We're not hindering one another. We're not hindering the children.
What if those that are obviously listening, we got probably, moms, we got dads, we got people, and they're going, okay, I know the school part's good. Because maybe they're obviously teaching and leading at a school, but they want to make sure the home part is good. What are some things that come to mind that families should be doing that maybe are not doing right now, just statistically speaking, I guess, across the US? But what are some of those things that, hey, you should be doing this daily or at least weekly? Because when I think about the three-legged stool, I'm like, if they're going to a private Christian school, that leg of the stool is very long and strong because they're there for a long time. And then you're like church, they're a couple hours a week, maybe depending on the family and the church. And then family, they're at home a lot, but they sleep a lot at home. And so like, what does that need to be? What needs to be happening at home to really assist and help the school also be successful?
Yeah. I think that families really, if I were to try to tackle all three of those together, I would probably start with the family, with parents, and say, hey, the way that you live into your understanding of faith is the greatest gift that you're giving your child. And so that isn't just about going to church on Sunday. It's not just about praying before meals or even having a quiet time that your kids can see. All those things are valuable, but it's more about how are you living into your faith in your daily life? Because then that's what transpires to a child in school and ultimately in their church community. So if a parent is complaining all during the week about, I can't wait for the weekend, I hate my job, it's just so difficult, and they're talking about people at work, they're teaching their child that there's dualism, that the work that they're doing isn't really integrated into their faith formation. It's something separate. What they do at school is separate. What they do at church is separate. And that's probably one of the leading causes for young adults deconstructing their faith, is the exemplars that they love cannot see that it actually works for them. So it's difficult. And the families that I work with, whether it's through schools or churches, and I do both, they have to recognize that their greatest transmitter of faith is their own faith. And the vulnerability of that faith is probably the second greatest gift. So for them to say, I'm really tired, I was grouchy with you today, I'm so sorry, will you please forgive me, is a faith practice. It may not be praying, it may not be reading scripture, but it's a faith practice that sticks in the school, church, home, in Walmart. It fits everywhere. And that's what families need, is they need holistic understanding that who they're becoming is more important than what they're doing.
That's good. I like that. And I'll add something real quick on that. My favorite book of the Bible is James. And I love that. I say regularly to our group at church, I'm like, man, if everybody could just live out the book of James, wow, what a world we would be in if we could do that, because it's very difficult. There's a lot of convicting things in there. If we could just live out James 1:19 and being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry, holy smokes, what a world we would be in. But I've been reading through and doing a study in James, and I was talking about, obviously, faith without works is dead. And so I talk about, we might have this faith that our kids see on Sunday, but if we're not like living it out the rest of the week with like serving and loving and doing things for the community and doing things for other people, like what is that teaching our kids? And it was really cool because on Sunday we had an opportunity for this in our family. We have a family that's moving from our marriage group, moving up to another city to do ministry work. And so I told my 6-year-old, I was like, hey, you're going with me. We're going to go help move. We're going to pack their boxes into their U-Haul trailer. And so our whole marriage group showed up, and he got to he's 6, so it's not like you can heavy boxes, but he was still seeing all these men showing up to help move boxes for a family. And I was like, this is part about being a Christian, and we serve, we help each other out, when we need it. And it was just a cool little moment where I'm like, we got to find more things like that to involve kids in, to see like, it's not just about us, it's about serving and loving others. And so seeing it outside of Sunday church is
okay.
So
you that's an excellent example of what I mean when you said that there's so little time in the family, that a lot of it's teaching. Basically what you did, the way you live your life, that's a reflection of Christ's life, right? Mm-hmm. That serving one another is what he called us to be. And so it doesn't have to just take place in a church building or a school building. You're educating your child even at home by confirming what right? What he's learning, mm-hmm. right? Your son, what he's learning, and how you see him growing in that and enacting that. And so it's again, I think a family does weave those three relational institutions together for a child. As they get older, adolescents start really picking them apart. And that's where most of my work lies, in older adolescent, young adult age group, and where they're really going to push back if they see that something's merely an idea and a cognitive premise that's not real in their life, but they will gravitate greatly to those who flourish in the life of the Spirit with Jesus.
Amen. Brian, what you got to add?
Yeah, no, this is good. I could listen to Jennifer talk about this all day. So much wisdom. The thought that comes to mind. So for me, and it'd be interesting for you, Mitchell. You're younger than I am. But when my kids were born, it was kind of on the. And I don't want to step on any toes here, but it was on the tail end of the Growing Kids God's Way movement. And so, we read the books, and we're like, I mean, honestly, I remember thinking as a 20-something that there is a way, right? There's a formula, and if you do all the right things, and your kids grow up and they're great Christians, and everybody's like, wow, you're great parents. Maybe you should teach your Growing Kids God's Way group, right? And then you figure out pretty quickly that it doesn't really work that way. But I want to fast forward because I think that the current generation of parents, they have the risk of swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction where nothing works. So why try? So then that kind of creates this void or this vacuum, in the spirit of wanting to be authentic. And I don't think that's the answer either. So that's where, I mean, one, and this is kind of the breakdown of community. There's so many things, so many different ways we could go. But I think it's really important that there's multi-generational people having conversations as a family. So Jennifer has grandkids. Again, my kids are just out of college. Like Mitchell, your kids are just becoming school age. Like these conversations are incredibly important for us to work together on seeing our children grow up. And we're already seeing it sometimes in our schools because a lot of especially our classical Christian schools, which is just what I know, most of them were launched by Gen Xers or baby boomers. And, we're kind of getting older and we're getting these millennial or Gen Z parents coming in. And it's like, you sit down in an office, like I've heard heads of school tell me that, a parent will sit down of a kindergarten and tell the head of school, like, you can't discipline my child. And the head of school is completely puzzled. Like, what do you mean? Like this is the agreement that we're making. But again, it's how you view the school, how you view the purpose of the school, in what ways are we on the same page working towards the same goals. I think is going to be important. Now, in terms of what you could do, and I haven't started doing this, but there's a part of me that every time I see somebody with a baby, I just want to walk over and just whisper, "Don't give them a cell phone," and then just keep walking. I honestly think that's probably the easiest thing. Well, I don't know if it's easy. The thing that you can do with your children that will have the largest impact on them.
I agree. And let me add this in, and I know there's not a catch-all for all this. So I'm as we record this, 33. So obviously my wife and I are both millennials and on the younger end of millennial, because funny enough, millennials like 45 or whatever. So, Brian, you're not too far away from almost being a millennial, So, but our circle of friends, we're kind of surprised. Now, granted, our circle of friends is Christian, a lot of homeschooling inside there. Like we homeschool our kids, and the circle we're in, it's rare that we have somebody in our circle that is down for give their kids phones until they're at least 16. Like we're all kind of on the same wave of like, we've seen what it's doing and what it has done. We're like, we'll do the 16 thing. And at that point it's locked down strictly. And we have it for like when they're driving, I want to be able to communicate and, find you and stuff. That, and then no sleepovers. Like we're like, no sleepovers. Like that's when the bad things can happen and all that. So we're very protective, I feel like, of what could happen. Now all these things are coming out with like what's happened behind closed doors and things. So I would say, again, our circle, I know there's people out there like, oh, whatever, that's crazy. Give them a phone, because we see plenty of kids out there with phones at 9 years old and 10 years old and stuff. But our group is like, no way. Like we see what it's doing and we don't want any part of that. We don't want somebody to have access to our kid. But you're going to find obviously the opposite somewhere else. But I don't know. I'm hopeful for our generation, seeing like what's going on out there, and we're trying to put a stop to it. Because I think what we hear regularly in our circle is, well, all their friends have one, so we might as well get them one. It's like, I hate the arguments of like, well, just because everybody else is doing it, we're going to do it too. So they don't feel like they're going to be made fun of. I was like, I don't care if my kid's made fun of for not having a phone. Like I could care less, Plus he's also homeschooled, so it's gonna be a little less awkward to be like youth group, I was like, it's all right. But I don't know if that adds to what you're saying, but I guess there's circles. And so I'm hopeful for our generation. We'll see what they're, because we've seen it. And I guess we're not just blind to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. My adult children are in the same thought group as you're describing. The work that I do with your age group of parents is just, yeah, they don't they see the damage of technology. The thing that a lot of parents, especially those are maybe a little bit more disconnected from their faith, more just it's more surface, is that they feel like that they don't have anything to pass on, and so then they're reluctant to engage in faith. But like Brian would whisper to a new parent, I would say, Jesus is with you every step of the way, and so listen for him, listen for what he's saying and how he's guiding you. And that does take time. It takes time to actually be quiet and learn how to listen. And but I think the listening can happen not just when you're sitting still, but when you're putting your kids down to bed, when you're driving in the car, when you're washing the dishes, all of those things.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out at classreach.com. Now, back to the show. And it's all about intentionality. So what comes to mind, Jennifer, when you say that, like I was actually raised, so I was homeschooled my entire life, raised in a very strict home, to where we all know we've all seen that happen, where he goes the opposite way, where you have a huge fallout, where you're like, oh my goodness, the world. And I didn't, crazy enough, did not happen with me. And met my wife. She was a summer missionary, and we got married when we were 21, 22, very young, like just kind of crazy story, which typically you'd look at me and go, oh, he's gonna be one of those ones that goes crazy because he's gonna get out there and be like, the world, wow. But that didn't happen with me. And so there's a piece of like my wife and I going, I want our kids to be protected and sheltered to an extent, but you also, like you said, Brian, there's a pendulum. You can go the 100% the other direction to go, well, let's just let them have everything because I didn't have everything. And it's like, there's a way to do it, I think, properly. And I know one of the things we try and be really intentional with is, if he sees something or watches something, stopping it and explaining what he just saw instead of just assuming he probably understands what just happened. Or if he hears something out in public going, so that's actually a word we don't say and we don't use, and here's why we don't say it and use it. We had to have the middle finger conversation just a little bit ago because he saw it out with somebody, not to me. I was not getting in trouble by anything, whatever, but he saw, he goes, what does that mean? And I was like, oh man. And so I had to explain what it was, but not hiding away from the conversations. And I do feel like my family did not want to have some of those conversations with me growing up because they're like, we don't talk about that, or we don't. And I'm like, okay. And so that I don't think is the right way to handle this too. And so being intentional is a big piece, and it takes a lot of time to do that. So it's not the easy thing to do because it takes time.
Yeah, good for you. I just told my kids that the guy thinks I'm number one.
Yeah.
I just thought that's what he's trying to communicate. You're number one. To bring it back to our topic, I think this is where the church gets into, and being, I mean, again, I won't step on toes, but calling the church into like providing a narrative, like telling a story that's compelling and that people want to be a part of. So we're talking about kind of our circles. In the Christian classical schools about 15 years ago, it seemed like everybody started becoming Anglican. And I think part of it was this idea of looking for something that was rooted in a tradition, right? Not something that was tailored to meet the whims and demands and desires of the modern Christian consumer, right? I mean, this is the kind of the fallout of the seeker-sensitive movement, where there weren't any crosses on the wall, right? Now, if I walk into a church and there's no crosses, like I'm out, peace. I want to go somewhere like which, I mean, again, I'm writing myself out here, but like I want the bells, I want the thurifer, I want the incense and everything, because I want to be drawn out of myself. I don't like this whole world is about me. Everything that I go, someone's trying to tell me I'm special and sell me something to make my life better, right? When I go to church on Sunday, like I want to be reminded that this is not about me. I mean, that's the beauty of the Eucharist, right? There's nothing self-serving in me taking the Eucharist. This is me acknowledging my sin and acknowledging the need to be rescued from that sin through the blood and body of Christ. And I would encourage people to think about their churches and have this conversation with their pastors. I remember in one stage we'd been through a couple of church plants that went belly up, and we were just really frustrated. That's right before we became Anglican. But we were talking to this one pastor that we had a lot of respect for. And I was like, how do you pick? I mean, there's so many denominations. Like we tried this one, we didn't like it. We tried this one, no one would talk to my wife because, she's a woman. And then we tried this one, but no one's in charge and people just made stuff up. And he's like, the biggest thing is to find a pastor that's like living this life, someone that you feel like you can follow. Because again, it's bringing everything in sync, right? It's the school's moving in the same direction as the family, in the same direction as church. And so that church leadership, not, primarily being focused on, how many people came this Sunday, what was the giving, but a pastor is like, man, what we really care about is our life in Christ, like the identity, the formation of our community. I think that's going to be an emphasis, or should be an emphasis for families as well.
Jennifer, anything to add before we close this out here in a few minutes? Anything to add?
No, I think he just he said what I would say all along, and that is Jesus is interested in who we're becoming, and we have to belong to people before we can become who God created us to be.
Amen. And we're all on the same team. I think
all
that's
on the same team.
If we can go in with the mindset of knowing like the school, at least it should be all this way. Obviously, the school's got my back, the church got my back, and the family, we're all working together for the same goal of raising a child to love the Lord and live their life for Him. Like if we're all on that, we can all be bought in. We're good. If somebody's listening, you have one of those is not being completed, I would find another one. If a school you feel like is not doing that for your child and that's what you're wanting, and go find another one. And if the church is not doing that and supporting you in that way, go find another one. Would you guys agree with that? Is that too point blank, or what do you think?
We need to have another podcast to kind of really flesh it out. I think there is some truth if something's really blatantly wrong, but I do think it's easy to just shop. We get it's kind of a consumerist mentality. And so I would say, like you said, the church has your back, the school has your back, but also there's a responsibility, I think, for parents to realize, hey, I have their back. This person cares about my child. I need to be praying for my child's teacher. I need to be concerned about what they're doing. Same with, the people that I'm working. So it's a three-way street, if you will, in this three-legged stool. I just don't think anything is ever quite all good or all bad the way we'd like to make it.
Sure.
But that's my hazard. I guess that's who I am.
Well, guys, this has all been awesome. But as we wrap up, one final question for each of you. I want each of you to answer. And it's this: if you were to share one more piece of advice for the school leaders listening, what would your one piece of advice be? Jennifer, let's start with you.
Well, I'll try to make it real practical and short. I think the one thing that I'm seeing consistently that prevents us from being the healthy men and women that God created us to be is just a lack of silence. So whether you're a school administrator, a teacher, a parent, which often they're both, there's just not a lot of time in their life for silence. So I just encourage, even 5 minutes of complete silence is wonderful. If you can do 30 on a drive somewhere, no music, no podcast, if you have access to a morning time with coffee, with nothing but birds, that's beautiful. But I do think that the Spirit is consistently speaking. We just don't have the ability to listen anymore. So silence is my practical advice.
Amen. Brian?
My advice would be to find friends, find like-minded people, in churches and schools, even other families that you're enjoying time with. I think that's going to be the biggest influence both on, again, this idea that your personal life is the first step, your personal relationship with God, your identity in Christ, as you're passing it on to others. So that would be my, and recognizing that it's hard, especially post pandemic, people seem to pretty much keep to themselves, but don't give up. It's worth it. It's important.
Amen. Well, Brian, Jennifer, thank you both for taking time out of your day to hop on a podcast and talk about the three-legged stool. I've enjoyed it, and I always learned something from guests, and I learned something from both of you guys today. So thank you so much, and wishing you guys nothing but the best as you both continue to pour into the next generation that's coming behind us. Appreciate you both.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thanks.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to our guests for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love the people that I get to interview in this podcast. And as always, I'm hoping you guys are able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Before you guys go, I do want to make sure you are aware of our 3 free resources available here at School Success. And the first one is, of course, the podcast that you're listening to right now. We are dropping weekly episodes every single Monday morning. We want to make sure you guys aren't missing out. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you haven't left a 5-star review, we would love a 5-star review as well. The second one is on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. In the top right-hand corner is a button, School Success Report. You just click that and sign up for that. We send it directly to your inbox every single week. It's full of different articles our team has either found or written to help you, the school leader, be more successful. And last but not least is our free Facebook community called School Success Makers. It's an awesome place. I'm personally in there. I'd love to see you in there as well. Get some good community around you, ask questions, and just have some fun. So make sure you are joining our free Facebook community. We'd love to see you in there. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. We'll be back here next week with another awesome guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.